Доброго дня, вітаю знову всіх у Палітурці. Я Андрій Альохін. Сьогодні наш гість, письменник Петро.
Hello and welcome to Binding. I'm your host Andrei Alyokhin. Today's guest is writer Petro Yatsenko. He's quite well known after the publication of several novels. He's also known for one particular story associated with one of his novels called Lviv Saga. When it was released in Ukraine, it went unnoticed. It was in second to last place in the ratings list back then. And then the novel was noticed abroad, in Europe. It was translated and printed, and it won the Austrian Literature Prize. The book was translated into Polish then and republished in Ukraine. That is how Yatsenko became a true winner with a capital W. We will chat with this winner right now. So let's start.
Зараз і поговоримо. Поїхали. Отже, Петре, ця історія...
So, Petro, I feel that this story deserves a series, or at least a movie. The writer who publishes a book, it goes unappreciated, but then someone abroad says, listen, you are a genius. This is a perfect book. Tell us how it all happened.
Я розкажу, як це сталося, коли я зрозумів, що раптом мою книжку помітили.
Okay, I will tell about the moment when I realized that someone had seen my book. I received an email 1 year after its release, the moment when it was unnoticed, as you say. It looked more like a letter from some Nigerian scam friends. It went like this. Dear Petro Yatsenko, with misspelling, you have won the right to take part in a draw for 150,000 euro. I wanted to delete it, but 1 second was decisive. I read further and realized that my book was somehow included in a competition in Germany, the Eastern European Books Competition. It listed 26 books, and someone had translated mine.
Східної Європи, 26 книжок, і хтось її там переклав.
The book had not won 150,000 euro, yet it had won a prize place so I could go there, receive 1,000 euro, and live in Vienna for a month. I was shocked and caught off guard. Where did this come from? I never applied to take part in anything. Then it transpired that one translator from Germany wrote to me a year ago, saying that she had heard about my book. Everyone's saying it is not competing in any contest. Can you please send me a text? I sent it and forgot about it. She translated quite a big chunk of my novel and submitted it to a contest without telling me. The book received an award, and it was such a nice surprise.
І без мого відома подала на конкурс. Книжка там отримала премію. Це було дуже приємна несподіванка.
Слухайте, я
I can't imagine completely. I would like to make an appeal to our viewers. Check and read your letters, even if they appear to be from Nigerian scammers. If someone says that you won $100 million, read the letter to the end. Maybe you wrote a nice book, which you may have forgotten about. I mean, anything can happen. Alright, so it turned out that the book is successful, the audience abroad received it well. And as far as I know, it was published in Poland.
Видали вже пізніше.
Пізніше, так.
Я собі спокійно попрацював над наступною книжкою
It was published a bit later. I worked without hurrying on the next one in Vienna. Time went by, and I also received a Polish scholarship for it in a similar manner.
Стала Ольга Токарчук, яка зараз отримала Букера і номінується її книгу.
I got lucky. My curator was Olga Tokarczuk, who received the Booker Prize. One of her books is nominated for the next one, so I'm very pleased. Then, almost a year ago, a Polish publishing house wrote to me that they're ready to publish Lviv Saga. And strangely enough, they published it. They issued it and came to Lviv to the Publishers Forum. Almost all the copies they had were sold there, the ones they'd released in Polish.
Знаєте, чесно кажучи, от подивіться, як буває. Як на мене, Петро...
Later, yes. So to be honest, as far as I can see, this is an assessment, in a certain way, of our system. When foreign publishing houses come to our book forums with releases by our authors, ones which we don't appreciate for some reason, because we're searching for something different. What about Lviv Saga? Is it popular now? Can you tell us what it is about? The one that went unnoticed at first. But as I know, you received a lot of fan mail, and many people have said it was a beautiful piece.
Чудовий твір.
Is that true?
Насправді, дуже багато було відгуків свого часу, коли ця книжка вийшла, цей роман, у Львові, на загальноукраїнську. Це було...
Indeed, yes. I got a lot of feedback when the book was presented in Lviv. It was 10 years ago. You know how things were here 10 years ago? The situation is better now, in the cultural aspect, I mean. We have support. Many people have noticed all this support for Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian publishing and authors. It was a lot worse 10 years ago.
І в нас ми були в такому гетто.
We were in some sort of ghetto. No one knew, heard, or saw us.
Я до цього стався.
I look at philosophical approach to it. There is a quote from The Matrix that there are different levels of survival to which we can agree.
Рівні виживання.
When you write a book, it's great if you can get it published. We had these points in the contract. For instance, when a book is released, the author has to bring a bottle of brandy because it's a big deal. After all, like,
Навіть такі пункти в мене, що коли
yes, the book is out. What a big day. I brought some brandy, and they had to pay me, but it turned out quite the opposite. Are you serious?
Так, я приносив коньяк, і вони мені мали
They thought the author should bring them something, because the author needs it first and foremost.
щось їм давати, бо оскільки це ж потрібно автору.
Ну, я
I want to say that in Ukraine, all authors and writers can be divided into two small but equal categories. Those that publishing houses follow and chase, and the ones who try to convince publishing houses, please publish my book, at least 2 pages. And so, shall we say, the relationship between publishing houses and writers, we've always had this unequal relationship. Someone is lower in status, and someone is more privileged. Or it's a writer who tells a particular publishing house that he doesn't know whether he will work with it. Or it's a publishing house that says we will publish, but sweeten the offer with bourbon or something else. But how do foreign publishing houses treat writers?
Відмінність є дуже велика, насправді.
There are actually many differences, because when Lviv Saga was presented in Wroclaw, it opened the Bruno Schulz Festival. The organization of the festival is such that it implies that it'll cover your expenses for the flight. Then they meet you, drive you around in a limousine from the airport. You have everything, a big audience in the city center. People grab interviews with you. You visit TV and radio broadcasts. You sit there on stage, and all the light is aimed at you.
На тебе світять софіти.
So at least they don't ask you to bring some brandy.
В нас теж так само, в мене це
You work with top translators, and the audience is very open towards you. We also have this level of attitude, but it is even higher in those places where the publishing market is bigger, and there is more money involved.
і в критиці, і в подачі, і в тому, як це організовано.
на жаль, жити письмен.
Unfortunately, not many writers in Ukraine can afford to just live off their earnings as authors. There are just a handful of writers who can afford to live just from what they earn from their writing.
Ну, скажімо так, їх можна перелічити дуже швидко.
Our guest can tell us what might change in this aspect.
Проблема, коли ти
The problem is that you can and want to write. You publish books, you are paid a fee, but you cannot live on that fee. It's a bit easier now.
Зараз все значно легше. Я заздрю сучасним письменникам, які написали книжки, які можуть
I'm jealous of modern writers who write a book and get 30 to 40,000 hryvnias for their work.
першу книжку, а може за наступні наклади отримують більше. Нас
On a first book, they earn more with every subsequent print run. In those days, there were only a few writers who lived just on their fees, but now their number is steadily increasing. We have children's literature now. It has developed well in recent years, with larger print runs and writers receiving bigger fees. It is not the same as in the West, but our country is still developing.
Країна
The country is rather poor. The rights are sold abroad. For instance, if several books are released in China for the English-speaking readership, it is possible to survive on the fees earned.
в мовному ринку то вже можна жити, і в мене вже все більше стає.
I'm getting to know more and more fellow writers who can afford to live on their fees for a long time. It's quite wonderful.
І жити тривалий час за гонорари, що дуже тішить.
Ну що ж,
Let's hope that in future our writers will earn some respect in society, and the profession of writer will become more respected in society.
тому що, ну добре, а про
What topics do you think a writer should write about to become, shall we say, money-making? Have you ever wondered?
прибутковим, якщо хочеш знати.
Ну насправді є в нас прибуток.
Children's literature is quite profitable now, since the print runs are larger in comparison to fiction and adult literature. There is demand for non-fiction, which is not that popular among writers, and we really need it.
Його фактично немає. У нас він потрібен в тій же
For instance, non-fiction is a large branch that earns big profit in Poland, as the print runs there are enormous. The authors are popular, even those who write about Ukraine. Lots of people read there. We went to different events with them. I was invited as well. And they're nice and respected people. We have a few authors who are starting to write in this genre.
Потім сама праця письменницька, на мою думку,
Then the vocation of writer, in my opinion, how it usually happens in Ukraine. A writer decided something, came up with an idea, and he sits and writes. Then such writers find a publishing house that will release it, and it's published. People are not interested, or they don't want to read it, but the author has worked for his pay, and the publishing house released it. On the other hand, startups have begun to develop. I worked with large European and Ukrainian startups. I know it's different. There they ask at the very beginning, what needs to be done? For instance, I asked, what should I do? With regard to my book, don't tell, don't listen, don't look. I asked, what would you want to hear or see? Readers gave me their insights. I wrote the book, and it is quite successful. Quite successful. I know this for sure.
Ви знаєте, кожен письменник мріє знайти.
You know, every writer dreams of finding his or her place on the bookshelf. There's high literature, but there's also the pulp fiction subgenre. And there's literature everyone would read.
Є література для всіх, а є справді література.
So the main goal of a writer is to find their own spot on the bookshelf. In fact, every writer dreams of it.
Завдання
Let's move on.
коли я запитував своїх читачів,
When I asked my readers on Facebook what they would like to read, they said cyberpunk. Cyberpunk about Ukrainian classics or classic Ukrainian authors. Yet steampunk is more appropriate for association with Ukraine. At least the era was similar.
якраз
Yes, roughly speaking.
Нечуй, коли народився,
When Ivan Nechulevitsky was born, they had a steam engine in the neighboring village. It worked there in 1848.
Так, але тут головне ключ.
Sure, but the key words are, in my opinion, in the village. Why? Because it is more urban culture. We have always had wheat, fields, villages, land. Would oxen scream if they had enough to eat, and so on. But to reinterpret it in punk style, I mean Nechulevitsky,
Нечуй насправді його і конвертував.
there was actually no need to reinterpret Nechulevitsky. First, because he's an urbanist writer, although many refer to him differently.
Що він письменник села. Ні.
We were told that he writes about village life, but not so. He has beautiful works about urban life, and he spent the vast majority of his life in Kiev, Poland, and modern Moldova. In fact, he wrote more about the city than the village.
Тобто я зробив з Нечуя
What I made from Nechulevitsky, I cleaned him up.
людину, яка
Contemporary and current, today. I made a man of him who will be interesting for modern readers. His emotions, mechanics, pieces, his fate, life overall. Anyway, they're all interesting by themselves. Okay, let's say Lviv Saga and the story of the executioners who eventually ended up on the same level as criminals. Well, it's something totally different. It can already be taken to the bank. Isn't it some kind of gothic story?
ну там сказати все-таки
I can tell you that it's not gothic. It is the beginning of the 20th century.
але
The story was that I was working on TV at the time and made various videos for Kiev. They were popular then, Lviv exotica, so to speak.
популярні, значить, це різна така.
Yes, I remember such exotic Lviv stuff. So there were no Lviv coffee shops back then, but people needed something exotic. We filmed, for example, a story about a coffin that flies around in Lviv City Council when someone passes rulings that are unfair. We filmed this story.
Якісь неправосудні рішення виносять несправедливі. І ми знімали про львівського кафе.
I remember several reports like that on the ICTV channel. There were always something different.
Я був автором ідей.
I was the creator of the idea, so I had to suffer a bit. When I said that we will make a clip about a Lviv executioner, the cameraman said that we needed a victim and that I would be perfect for the role. They tortured you.
Мене поклали...
They laid me down. We came and we have a fine museum arsenal in the center, which contains a lot of weapons. They laid my head there with a hood and a cape. We filmed in the dark. And instead of an executioner's block, there was a huge drum, an old one.
Барабан старовинний, мені туди поклали голову.
Our assistant took a real executioner's sword, quite a large, old one. I begged him to hold it tight. Even though it was not sharp, it would be better to hold it firmly.
Я б дуже просив, щоб він дуже міцно його тримав. Тому що хоч він був не загострений, але якщо б він впустив, то
Well, what were those feelings like on the executioner's block?
я пам'ятаю, що я тоді
I
пообіцяв.
remember that I promised myself that if I do survive, I will write a book about it.
Вижив.
You survived though, I see.
І це була
There were several terrifying takes with a real executioner's sword. So they cut off heads with a sword, not an axe.
не сокира.
Yeah, that was the story.
Рубали саме мечем.
Like a samurai or something.
Ось така була історія.
My book emerged after that.
Це була от якби ця історія появи цієї книги.
Ну, Петре, що я можу сказати? Будь ласка, як
Well, what can I say, Petro? If it was the payment that has to be made for such beautiful books, then you have to agree to a next time. A chopping block, guillotine, or cross, I don't know. If you then continue to produce good books that we will read, tell us that you'll do everything for that. Coffee is enough.
я дуже дякую, що ти з'явився.
Thanks for coming to visit us on Binding. See you sometime soon. Is that a deal?